So, what is Duelyst? I think I'll use the weekly challenge to talk about what is Duelyst, because it will allow us to talk about the board itself, right? So, Duelyst is basically a 1v1 card game that is played on a board. So, the board is composed by 5 per how much? Per 9? Yeah, 5 per 9, right? And the beauty of this game is that cards that are played, which are your minions, move around the board to attack other minions or enemy general, right? And the positioning and the movement and all the strategy that comes with it adds a layer of complexity that really makes this game quite unique. In this game, you are your general, which starts with 25 health, and you have 2 attack. And the opposing general, the same, 2 attack, 25 health. The first general that reaches 0 loses. Right, so your objective in the match is just to destroy your opponent, using your minions to help bring that health down to 0. So as you can see here, most minions, actually can move 2 spaces, right? So that makes it very interesting because you have to decide where to move the minion, and normally you can only attack the minions you have in reach. So in reach is basically everything that surrounds you, right? So all the squares around your minions or general. For example, here we can attack the ghostlings because we're right next to it. But this one, for example, there's no way they can reach this minion, right? They could move and then they can reach these 2. You can see that they highlight because those are the options that you really have because of your position. Once you attack, your attack goes towards the health of that minion, and if it reaches 0, they die, and their attack goes to yours. So unless otherwise by certain cards, every attack replies with a counter attack. If you attack with a 4-2, you do kill them, and they don't manage to kill you, right? Basic. Now, that's like the most core part of the game. Besides minions and generals, the game allows you to play a certain amount of cards, and that is limited through the mana. So once you start the match, you start with 2 mana if you're going first, which is defined here on the left. This, where my mouse is the starting position for player 1, and you start with 2 mana. And then your opponent, which starts right at the other end of the board, starts with 3 mana. Now, every turn, you increase your mana capacity by 1 until reaching 9, which is the limit. There are cards that can give you more mana. There are cards that take away mana from your opponent. But mana is how you basically play the cards that you have. You can see here the value of each card in your hand through mana. There are 3 mana tiles at the beginning of each game. There's a little ball both here, here, and here. You can see that if I clear these... Alright, just clearing the board, you can see that there's 3 tiles, right? This is basically a mana tile, and until it's used, it only has 1 use. You get 1 mana by stopping on it or putting a minion on it. Passing through the mana tile, you do not take the mana. You have to stop in it, either with yourself or with a minion. Get mana, cast Mecanter. I mean, literally. Alright, so that is the board, the mana, but what type of cards can you have in this game? There's 3 main type of cards. There are minions, which are basically units that have stats, attack and defense. There are spells that are casted from the hand and have some type of effect. And then there are artifacts. We don't have an artifact here to show it, but basically you can equip an artifact, always equipped to your general. The artifacts go to your general and have 3 uses. The use means that every time you receive damage, you lose one use of the artifact, right? So most artifacts will make it that once you hit 3 times, or you are hit, you'll lose the artifact, right? And it just disappears. If you don't receive damage, the artifact use does not break. That's very important. You don't have to explain all this to me. No. We're going through all of it. Every single detail that I can think of. So those are the 3 type of cards, right? Now, there's something very important that takes a little bit of time to get used to, and that is the amount of keywords that you can find in the game. Luckily here we have Pandora, which her effect is creating little minions, and they all have different keywords. So let's go through the keywords, right? The first, I'm gonna follow my own order, because if not, I'm gonna lose it. Okay, so the first one is Provoke. Provoke basically creates a ring around the minion, and that means that everything around that minion has to attack the minion who provokes them. It's like taunt, right? So you're provoking them, they cannot move, and they have to attack you until they're provoked. If the provoked stops to be because the minion that is provoking them dies, that minion is now released, and then they can attack and move wherever they want, right? So that is Provoke. Really key keyword. The other one, or next one, is Flying. So Flying, as you can imagine, means that you're not limited to 2 movement spaces. You can literally move anywhere in the board you want to, where there is no minion already in it, right? So you can basically just fly around the board, only moving once, right? Because all minions can only move once per turn, and position yourself exactly in the spot that you want to. The next one is Celerity. So this minion has Celerity. Celerity means that they can move and attack twice. So normally, as we said, a minion attacks once and then it becomes exhausted. The same way as when you summon a minion, they're immediately exhausted, right? They can't move normally when you play them. So basically this minion, when it's their turn, since this minion is from the opponent, you can see that by the red tile under them. This minion could move, attack, and then attack again. It could move, attack us, move again, and attack. If it dies with the first attack, it's not going to be able to do the second one, right? But if it survives the first hit, it can go again. So really, really interesting keyword, Celerity. What else? Ranged. So ranged is basically shooting in the distance. I don't know how to say it better than that. The best thing about ranged is that it doesn't get retaliated. So once you attack with range, unless the other minion has range, you don't get retaliated, right? It's like if you have a bow, right? You just throw the arrow and that's it. You don't care. Nothing happens to you. The other one gets hit by an arrow. If the other one has a bow, he's probably going to be like, hey, and attacks you back, right? But if they are not ranged, you'll be able to kill them without any payoff. Now, if this minion, for example, had range, it could shoot anybody on board, unless it's provoked. Because even if it has ranged, if there's a minion next to it that is provoking it, it cannot choose to attack anybody, as we said before. The next one is Rush, which is not included in Pandora here. But Rush basically means that once you play a minion, as you see, they're exhausted. They cannot move, they cannot attack. But if they have the keyword Rush, they can. They can move 2 spaces and they can attack. Very, very basic response there. We then have Frenzy. I think Frenzy is included here. Frenzy. So Frenzy is a very important keyword as well, because what Frenzy means is that they attack every enemy minion that surrounds them. If this minion would be here and it attacks any of these 3, it hits all of the 3 because it has Frenzy. So when you have a frenzy minion, you always choose to attack the weakest one, in this case the general, because the retaliation only comes from the one you hit. It hits everything else, but it only gets retaliated by the one it decided to attack. So very strong keyword as well, frenzy. What else do we have? We have airdrop. So something important about the board, as you can see, the highlighted area is only around the minions that I myself own. I can only play minions that surround my already existing minions or general, right? I cannot put this minion here. It doesn't allow it, because there is no way that this minion drops here without being connected with another minion nearby. So that's really important in terms of how you position. Because if you want to reach here, for example, you could chain minions, right? So you play one, and then you play the other one, right? See, if I play this one, now my range has expanded, and I can actually play this one here, which I was not able to before. But airdrop changes that. Airdrop means that you drop it wherever you want, literally. If the space is not occupied, you can just put it there. And that's airdrop for you all. What more? I'm talking about neutral keywords still, though. So let's go and restart this so that I can explain opening Gambit. So opening Gambit, here it says destroy a nearby allied minion to draw 2 cards. So if I play this here, it gives me the option to trigger the opening Gambit. You can skip it and it doesn't get processed, or you select the minion that you want to sacrifice because that's his effect, and you draw the cards. If I would have had more space in my hand, I would have drawn 2. This one, opening Gambit, summon a Wraithling directly behind this. The moment it hits the board, it triggers the opening Gambit, right? So it summons the minion behind. Now, what else am I missing? Dying Wish. So there's a keyword that is Dying Wish, and how we're gonna do it is we're gonna represent it with the Dying Wish that we have here. This says the next minion you play with base cost 4 or more, cost 4 less, right? So we're talking about mana. So you can play this, and we can kill it with the opening Gambit of this other one. And the moment it dies, you can see that this card that used to cost 8 now costs 4. Because Elder Chain died, now you can summon this other card cheaper, right? And there is a variety of Dying Wishes, a variety of opening Gambits, and you're gonna have to learn that as you go through the game. The difficulty about Duelyst is to understand what the cards do, to englobe what your opponent can play and what you should be prepared and play around, right? The only keyword that I'm missing that is present wide within all the factions, we'll get into the factions in a moment, is Veil. So Veil, we don't have it here, but Veil basically means that you cannot play a spell on that minion that has Veil. It's like it's protected by an aura that negates spells that are casted directly on them, right? So if this minion had Veil, I could not play this spell on it. It's a less common keyword, but very important to know, because sometimes you're going to want to play a spell and you're not going to be able to play against a certain minion because they have the Veil. They'll have a little aura around them, just so that you know that you can't do that. Alright, nice. So let's get out of here and let's go see the factions, because we need to talk about keywords inside each faction. So the beauty about Duelyst is the diversity it has in its existing 6 factions, right? So Duelyst has the, let's say, the Holy faction, which is Liner. It has the Ninja faction, or Burst faction, which is Songhai. It has the Sand Mechanic faction, which is Vitruvian. It has the Death underground faction, which is Abyssian. The dinosaur lizard faction, which is Magmar, and the ice faction, which is Vanner, right? Now, we'll talk more about all of them, right? But I just wanted to present you the 6 factions that we have in Duelyst. We also have what is called a neutral pool. These pool of cards can be used in any of these 6 factions when creating a deck. Why do I want to talk about keywords and factions together? Is because there are certain keywords that are specific to a faction and also kind of define them. They give them a personality, right? When it comes to Linar, the keyword is Zeal. So Zeal is a keyword that means that if this minion is located in the board around your general, it triggers the effect that it has. Zeal plus 2/0 means that if this minion is close to your general, it will be a 4/3 instead of a 2/3. Other keywords from Linar is... I think that's it. All the other keywords in Linar have been already discussed. You have Celerity, which we talked about. You know, Provoke, more Zeal, right? But Zeal is particularly specific to Linar. No other faction has Zeal. When it comes to Songhai, as we said, they're ninjas, right? They're ninjas and they like to attack you from the back. That means that the keyword Backstab is only found in Songhai. When you have a minion that has the Backstab keyword, you can attack the back of another minion and not receive retaliation, just as ranged, for example, right? So in this case, you want to be positioned in the back of your opponent. What does that mean? That means that if there's a square where there's a minion, and the minion is looking that way, and this Kaido is right behind them, it's gonna attack for 4 damage. So 2 plus the 2 of the Backstab, 4, and it won't get response. The other minion will not answer the attack, right? What other keyword do we have? I think in Songhai that's it. Then we have Vitruvian, the sand faction. And in Vitruvian, we find ourselves with Blast. So Blast means that if this minion attacks, it doesn't only attack the minion that is in front, but the entire row, right? So if you have this Pyromancer on the board, you can attack from the distance as if it was ranged, but only column or row wise, right? So this can only attack in one direction, but everything that is in that direction gets affected by the attack. It also does not get answered just as ranged unless the minion is right next to it. So if the minion is adjacent to the blast, that one will retaliate. If there is no minion adjacent, it will just blast with no retaliation. Same thing with range, right? If you have a minion that you're attacking that is right next to you, you do get retaliated. There's also another keyword in Vitruvian, and it's called Gateway. So Gateway is very specific to these minions that are basically called obelisks. What it means, Gateway, is that at the start of your turn, you'll summon this Wind Dervish around this structure. So basically, Gateway means that every turn, it summons a Wind Dervish, right? It works for Fireblaze Obelisk, Windstorm Obelisk. There's also the Ethereal Obelisk, and they all summon dervishes at the start of your turn. And this dervish that it summons has rush, but it also disappears at the end of the turn. So you have to utilize it in the turn that it's summoned. Careful with front and back. Not easy to see it, let me tell you. That is a very, like, I tried to be very clear because it's a very difficult thing to see at the beginning. Some minions do not have a clear face and you don't know where they're looking towards. So you have to be really careful that you have to be in the back. This is also important for other cards that they activate their effect looking forward to a minion. So you always have to know in which direction you're going of the two. If you're player 1, you're always looking in the same direction, which is towards the right. If you're player 2, you're always looking towards the left. Thank you, Joy Boy. Helping us even in the distance. Alright, so that was Gateway from Vitruvian. Now we go to Abyssian. So Abyssian has a couple of specific keywords itself. It has something called Deathwatch. So Deathwatch means that when anything dies on board, any minion, the effect that it has happens, right? So for example, give a minion Deathwatch, this gains +2/+2, means that whoever you assign or equip this spell to gets +2/+2 every time something dies. A very strong effect, but you have to have those triggers of deaths so that they trigger this ability, right? There's also something called shadow creeps. So shadow creep is basically a tile. So this goes on the board and stays there. And as you can imagine, being, you know, spikes on the floor, it hurts whoever is on top. Only enemy though. You can walk on these perfectly fine. Going to Magmar, the lizard faction, you have Grow, which is basically an effect that is triggered at the start of every turn. It triggers this effect. So every turn, this is gonna grow +1/+1. So it's gonna become 3/5, 4/6, and so on and so forth. There's cards that combine with Grow. There's different Grow effects and different Grow minions. Besides that, you also have Rebirth. So Rebirth means that when this minion dies, it leaves an egg behind. And if that egg stays until the end of your next turn, it will revive and transform into the minion that it originally was. Last but not least, we have Vanner, the Ice Kingdom. Kindred, actually. And Vanner has a keyword which is Infiltrate. So the board, as you've seen it, is split in two. Your starting side of the field and your opponent's starting side of the field. Infiltrate only takes place if the minion is on your opponent's side of the field. So if you're player 1 and you start on the left, Infiltrate for you is the right side where they start. And every time you have a minion in that side, the Infiltrate tag is activated, right? For example, Crystal Cloaker is a 2/3, but if it's positioned in Infiltrate inside your opponent's field, it becomes a 4/3, right? And those are the keywords that the game has. There's many. I understand. Don't get lost. You will understand as you play, and you will get used to the keywords. They're just really important to know, because if you don't understand the keywords, you don't understand what's happening on the board. Infiltrate is always the opposite side of the middle mana tile you started on. Yes, exactly. Except if you go second and you go towards that middle mana tile that you're mentioning, Skull, the one right to the left is still the middle. So how this works is there's two sides. We said there's nine columns, right? The middle column does not count as Infiltrate. So there's 4 on the left and 4 on the right. So basically the 4 columns in which your opponent starts. Not a super easy to understand visually. You have to get used to it. But once you understand Infiltrate, it's more simple to play with it. Alright. So those are the keywords, the factions, and now what I wanted to cover. Well, we talked about neutral a little bit. They all have different keywords that we've already said. Nothing besides what we've mentioned. Now, this game has different game modes. So when you hit play, you always start with practice. Practice will go through a little tutorial that will go through the basics of the game. You can always play more and more practice to play against a machine, basically a bot. Then you have the solo challenges. So these are challenges of difficulty in which you are basically put with a task to finish the match in one turn. For example, earn your wings, right? This is a challenge in which you're presented with a board state. You have a general and you have an enemy general. And you have cards in your hand, a limited amount of mana. And you have to defeat them that same turn. This is a really good exercise to go through, not only because you earn gold that you can use to buy orbs that we'll cover in a bit, but also because it teaches you the basic mechanics. So we have two cards here. This one deals 2 damage to all units. So when it says unit, it includes general and minions. And this one gives +0/+4 to a minion. Now they have 4 health. So you immediately think that you have to hit them at least twice. Now, because of positioning, we can't reach. We can only move once. So now we are fatigued. What is the key here is that Dragonlark is a flying minion. How could we reach them? We could just fly over, but as you can see, you can only stop near these wraithlings, but you can't reach the general. If I were to move here, I could only attack these 3. So they are very well defended. Now, we do have Tempest, which does 2 damage to everything and would clear the board, but it would also kill our Dragonlark. So here, by giving more health to our Dragonlark, it survives the Tempest. And then it just comfortably flies over and kills your opponent. So this is a very basic example of these solo challenges. And they go by difficulty. So you start in a very simple scenario and you end up in very complex scenarios. I don't know why it says new. Oh, we haven't completed them. Okay. I don't want to go through the very complex ones because they can be very overwhelming unless you go little by little. It's understandable that you can get stuck at a certain point. Normally, once you start in level 3, things get slightly complicated and you really have to think about it. But putting in the time there will really push your brain to understand the mechanic of the game. You can also find the solution to these challenges online, but that's not going to give you much more than just the gold you obtained by resolving them. Anyways, highly recommended to complete the challenges. You then have Season Ladder. So this is the main mode of the game. Here you compete against other players, and as you compete, you go up in the ladder. So we basically have a rank system in Duelyst. You start in level 30, bronze. You advance to from 20 to 10, which is silver, and then from 10 to 5 is gold, and from 5 to 0 is diamond. Once you reach 0, you reach S rank, which basically has a numerical system that will put you in a position against all the other players. Now, as you advance, you play against players that are more advanced, so things get more difficult. If you win several games in a row, you will progress faster, and things will get complicated faster. Now, as you advance in the ranks, you get better rewards when the season finishes. The season finishes every month, by the way. So that's Season Ladder, the main game mode, right? You then have Gaunlet, which is basically a draft mode. So in Gaunlet, you are presented with different options to select cards as if you were opening packs, and you choose one and discard the others until you complete a deck. And with that deck, you face other opponents that have gone through the same process. Once you start Gaunlet, you select a faction. It costs 20 gold to start, and when you finish, you receive prizes such as Gaunlet tickets, gold, and spirit. We'll cover what spirit is in a bit. You choose a faction, and then you can get cards of that faction, more likely, and other factions as well. So there is a little bit of cross play. Sandbox is basically when you want to try some deck against yourself. So you control both player 1 and player 2. If you have more than one deck, you can play one against the other. And then there's Legacy, which is basically Duelyst 1 until it was shut down. There's not much players playing this mode, so I don't recommend queuing in here because you might not find a match. If you do want to play Legacy, you can write in the Duelyst Discord, and that way people know that there's somebody that wants to play Legacy, and you'll probably find someone that queues in to play with you. And that is the modes. All right. What else? Ribbons. Battle ribbons are basically medals for achieving a certain number of victories. Once you reach 100 victories with a certain faction, you collect a ribbon. You can see there's ribbons of each faction. There's also ribbon for tournaments. If you do play tournaments, you can get a tournament ribbon. Not much more to cover there. Here in the profile area, by the way, you have a summary of your current rank, the top rank you reached, how many wins you have, and your Gaunlet run. You can also see what level you have each faction. You can see your rank history every time you've played, and how far in level you reached. You can see your match history. You can see the list of top players at the moment in S rank. And you can equip yourself a title if you have one. Talking more about faction levels, it's very useful for you to reach level 10 with each faction, because every time you raise a level of a faction, you earn rewards. The maximum level, I think, is 53 or 58. 58 probably. And you can reach level 10 by just playing practice, right? So at the beginning, your collection is going to be limited, as it is for this account, for example. This account has not seen that much play, so the amount of cards that we have in our card pool is reduced. You can basically play practice to raise those factions to level 10, because further it does not count, but until level 10 you get rewards that can help you build your card pool. And we can talk about that next, right? So these are the cards, right? When you start creating a deck, you have to choose the faction that you want to select. So for example, if we were to choose the Vitruvian Emperor, you then are not able to select cards from any of the other factions, of course. You do, though, have access to the neutral pool. Now, the limit of cards that you can put is 50. 55, actually. The minimum is 40. And normally, 40 is the most, how to say it, optimal? Oh. So building a deck, you're basically filling in up to 3 copies of each card. You can put as much copies as you have available in your collection, right? We'll do a video about how to build decks and how to create a proper collection. But in this moment, what I do want to say is that there are so many factions and you have a very limited amount of resources. In order to obtain new cards, you have to craft them For example, Ancestral Vessel. I don't own it. You can see that it's a little bit purple. Now, in order to craft it, I have to use Spirit. And Spirit is obtained either through Gaunlet or by disenchanting cards that you have. Now, the ratio of crafting and disenchanting, which is destroying the card that you own to get Spirit, is not great. So you have to be very careful of what you disenchant, because you're not going to get that many cards in return. But I would recommend, once you start, you can actually play around with all factions while you're playing in practice, understand what faction you find most interesting, and first invest there. You can also invest in 2, but going 3 or more, it's going to be very difficult for you to have a decent deck until later down the line. So if I were to focus on Vitruvian, I could disenchant cards I have in liner, for example, that I'm not that interested in. So I can disenchant some cards, get some Spirit, and then go to Vitruvian and craft those cards, right? It's a slow process, but thankfully, the price of Orbs has been reduced to 50. So every day or every few hours, you get different challenges, and you complete these challenges by playing, and this gives you gold. 50 gold will give you 1 orb. For example, you press there, you buy the orb, and now you've basically bought a pack that you can just open here. And a pack will contain 5 cards of different rarity, right? Of course, we haven't covered the rarities, but we'll get there. And then once you open the pack, these are cards that you obtain in your collection. We got Macantor! Let's go. And an Ancient Grove. Macantor excites me more because Macantor is an amazing card. We'll cover each faction and what cards to craft in our next video. But for now, what I do want to cover is the rarity. So you can have either common, rare. Let's go to Vitruvian, right? Common, rare, which is blue. Common is white. Epic, which is purple. And legendary, which is gold, right? Legendaries inside packs. Yeah. Yeah, it was a really good pack. Damn. All right. So, what is the difference of these cards? The difficulty to obtain them. You can put 3 epics in your deck as the same as you can put 3 commons or 3 rares or 3 legendaries. The only difference is that for you to craft a card that is rare, for example, will cost you 100 Spirit. If you want to craft one that is epic, it will cost you 350. And if you want to craft one that is legendary, it will cost you 900 Spirit. Now, you really have to administer your Spirit, because you need to build a core foundation before you go for certain legendaries. Normally, when you're starting to play, you find yourself in a situation like this account is, in which you might have 1 copy of a legendary that you got in a pack. You might have another one, and you have to somehow build the rest of your deck with other non-legendary cards to put together a competitive deck. But when it comes to deck building, I think that requires a video by itself, and we'll cover it in the next video. What you need to know now is that since they cost more, legendaries, they also give you more when you disenchant them. So if you focus on certain factions, you can disenchant the legendaries of that faction, of the other faction, to get Spirit for your faction, right? Now, what I wanted to talk about as well, we're gonna leave all the deck building stuff for the next video, because there's a lot of depth about deck building, and it gets rather lengthy. So to not make this much more lengthy, I'm just gonna cover a little bit about playing. So, something really important in Duelyst as we've covered already, is the board, right? So the board, well, actually, it's gonna be easier if I do it in practice. No, in sandbox, so I can play with myself. That came off terribly. God darn it. All right, so when you start a match, you obtain 3 cards. Now, these cards can be replaced if you choose to replace them. And this is a very important moment in the match because, as I said, you start with only 2 mana if you're on the left and 3 mana if you're player 2. In this case, the only card that I would be able to play is this spell. As I'm not interested in destroying a minion the first turn, I would replace them all because you really need to start with something, right? As a second player, you could also start with a 3 mana card or 2 2-drops. I'll show you that now. So thankfully, thanks to our replace, we did get minions that cost 2 mana. So normally you go forward because you want to profit from these mana tiles. As you can see, they haven't been used yet. So by advancing, you can position minions further. Now, key positioning turn 1 normally comes in these 3 spaces. Why? Because by playing a minion here, next turn you can move it to the mana tile. Same thing here with this one, or here with this one. Our opponent, as you can see, can reach here and play a minion here. That is why this one and this one are the most commonly used. Now, this minion that I've played has an opening Gambit that heals too. We are already at the maximum health, so it's a bit unnecessary to use. You can replace 1 card per turn to improve your hand, and you draw 2 cards at the end. Now, player 2 goes second, and they directly have access to a mana tile. So how this can be used is by playing a 2-drop on the mana tile, and I should go to 1 mana. But since I'm picking up the mana tile, I actually obtained a 4th, and now I still have 2 left. This is really important because now I can actually use another 2 mana card to chain within my turn. You have to be really careful about using your entire hand though, because hand management is very important. The moment that you use too many cards, you have a smaller pool of cards to choose from to play your turn. Replacing is also very important and normally should be done at the beginning of your turn so you can decide on the best play possible, right? Once you end your turn, you draw 2 cards and it's your opponent's turn. I'm not gonna read that. Anyways, so now is again player 1 turn. They have 3 mana because they started with 2. And since the minion has been eliminated, I cannot move into the mana tile this turn. But I do have a good 3 mana play. Now, I can choose to replace a card to see if I get a better turn. Not the case, so we can just go forward. Now, if we go forward, the good thing is that being in the center, you have access to both orbs next turn if they still remain. As you can see, this mana tile has been already used, so it's no longer there, and it cannot be used this match anymore. Now, when you advance, like right now, I can play a minion in any of these spots. The moment I move, I'll be only able to play it here. Sometimes it's better to play a minion first and then move. In our case, because this minion has Zeal, we don't want to do that because we want this minion to be next to us. So in our case, we go forward and we play our minion. Now, this is a 3/5 with Provoke. You can see the small aura coming under the minion. This is going to make so that these 2 units from my opponent cannot move away from it, and they cannot attack me, they have to attack it. Something very important to note here is, if I were to attack, I would take 2 damage away from the Windblade. But the problem is that they are already provoked by a minion that has 3 attack. So it would maybe not be the best play to attack, because if I attack and they go to 4-1, still with 1 health, they can attack next turn and they would have still received the 3 damage. So do I really want to attack? It depends on the situation that you want to or not to, you know, attack or not. In this case, for example, I'm just gonna pass. So this is my opponent's hand. For example, they have a 5-drop, but since they're provoked, they cannot move away from the Silverguard Knight, and they have to stay here. They cannot play the 5 mana because they're on 4. So, replacing, always good. And see, the only real choice I have is to attack here. If I would have attacked as player 1 that minion, this Windblade would have still attacked, and I would have had 4 damage that I didn't need to take. I'm still, as player 2 is still provoked, they still cannot move, so they need to kill this unit in order to be able to move, right? But once you attack, you can move no more. As I have 4 mana and 2 2-drops, I can play both. Here, what I did was basically put a minion in the way for this mana tile to protect it so that maybe I can use it next turn. I can't do anything more, so I finished. This time, by the way, I did use the effect of the Healing Mystic to heal my general, because I did have some damage from attacking the Silverguard. Now, the plays become more and more complex as the game progresses. There's much more mana, more minions, a bigger hand size, more options. You always want to replace to improve your hand to the fullest. In this case, since I don't have any minions and they have 2, a card that damages all units is beneficial to me. So we can do that and activate the spell. This makes it so that I can actually finish killing this minion. Before, since they both had 3 health, I could have not eliminated any of them. I now can also, as I have 2 mana left, play another minion. If I would have played this minion before the spell, it would have also affected the minion. Now, Dancing Blades is a very important starter card. Deals 3 damage to the minion directly in front of it. So again, positioning is important. Now, the place you want to play it is here, because it will do 3 damage to the minion in front. We're player 2, so we're going that way. So not here, here. The problem is I can't play it because I'm not close to it. So we first move, and now because it's next to us, I can play it. You can then choose to hit. You can move with the other minion to be close to mana tiles, or just attack. You can decide. You don't have to replace every turn if you don't want to, because maybe you like your hand. Other interesting effects, for example, is Repulsor Beast opening Gambits teleports a nearby enemy minion to any space. So nearby means that I have to play it near the minion I want to teleport, and I can literally choose where to send it. You can always play around the mana tiles so that you collect or you get benefited from them first. And so you go. I don't remember what I wanted to cover here, but I just wanted to go through a little bit of the game to show how it goes. So each player has 1 turn. you basically have two spaces of movement, and you can summon minions around your units. You can always move first to then be able to play it. Something that I wanted to cover in this is protection positioning. In this case, it doesn't matter, because by attacking this, I also have the option to play another Dancing Blades. And the situation is becoming quite advantageous for player 2. But imagine that I want to play a minion that I don't want them to be able to reach. This is a very key positioning that you need to learn early on, because sometimes you want to play a minion and protect it from dying in your opponent's turn. So how do you protect a minion from dying in your opponent's turn? Is you move away. If you don't want to move away, you can use your body to block your opponent. In this case, by moving here, you can see where each minion reaches. And as you can see, this spot is the most protected. So nobody can reach it, and that means that it will most likely survive. Or maybe not, but at least you have more chances than playing this minion close to them. Because having a 4/6, you want to put a 4/4, it's going to probably die immediately on board. So, very important. Another thing I wanted to cover is tempo. So, as you see, there's one turn on each player, and having the dominant position is something that you're going to start to feel as you play. As you can see right now, player 2 has a more dominant position. Why is that? Is because cards like Dancing Blades that have an opening Gambit that can destroy another minion give you tempo. And tempo basically means that you're going to be ahead and oppress the possibilities of your opponent. For example, if we continue to oppress them, if we continue to make their life difficult, you can really put so much pressure that even if my health is lower, the possibilities of them making me reach 0 are quite low. Let me see if I don't have it here. So in this case, for Lionar, for example, as a faction, it's difficult to come back from situations where we are so behind. Even if I play a Dancing Blades now and manage to finish this Provoke, they still have many more minions than me. So you need to be able to use cards from your hand, and having a bigger hand will allow you to have more chances to defeat your enemy, right? This minion, for example, has Airdrop. So what does that change? You see where I can position this minion by the yellow. If it has Airdrop, I can basically play it wherever I want. This allows you to reach certain corners that maybe you're interested in having a minion there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't make the mistake of playing a lot of small minions and running out of cards. As we mentioned before, your hand is really important. So if the player didn't have here the chances of playing so many cards, we could actually come back. But since the hand is quite healthy, it's very difficult that this player 2 loses control. It might lose control if the other player manages to play spells that maybe impact the entire board, for example. So once one player has invested so much on the board, if you have cards like Tempest that affect the entire board, you can get a lot of value out of them and recover the tempo that you've lost, right? And yeah, and once one of the two, wait. Actually, this player one has come back quite nicely. All right, but I'm not gonna continue this. The goal is to destroy your opponent and make them reach 0 health, right? And that's where you win. And yeah, that's everything I have for today. I think we've gone way too lengthy. I hope it covers at least the initial idea of what I wanted to cover for Duelyst. We will talk about deck building. We'll talk about crafting, creating decks, and we'll talk about different archetypes in different factions. We'll go through every faction and the different archetypes that it right now has. But for now, just play some Duelyst.